Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Necromaniacs. I got Jeff on the line. How's it going, Jeff?
Hello. Good, man. How you doing?
Doing okay. You know.
All right, glad to hear it. My cats are freaking out in the background. I don't know, like it's a strange day here in the old Kashid home.
Well, we were having some communications errors too, so maybe there's something going on.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. My phone keeps dropping your calls for some reason. Maybe the government doesn't want us talking about this movie.
Maybe.
For whatever reason.
Yeah. So before we get going, I just want to shout everyone out. Of course, I'm referring to the other horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. It's a collection of like-minded individuals, and we all support each other. And of course, I'm talking about Horror Wolf 666, hosted by Brandon Legion, Into the Necrosphere by Jackie Smith. Wednesday is Everything Went Black, which is my other podcast that I started way back in the dawn of time, and I still do it. That's happening. Thursday, of course, is Necro Thursday. Friday, Break the Apocalypse, which is co-host Mike Scindato's brother's podcast that he does every week. And of course, on Sunday, on the Lord's Day, Carl Hikara comes at you with Soul Knocks. I'm going to be a guest on an upcoming episode. We're talking about a Robert E. Howard werewolf story, and I'll leave it at that. So how's it going, Jeff?
It's going good. Also, want to point out I will be a guest on the Horror Wolf podcast in February.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's going good, man. I'm still doing my catch-up of 2002. Missed a lot of movies.
2002?
Yeah. It's been a while. I've been in a coma.
You're like 20 years behind, man. 21 years.
Yeah, I'm a busy guy, Mike. Yeah, it's 2022. Oh, it's that kind of morning, man. Anyway, yeah. Usually the first couple of weeks, I try to catch up on things that I missed the year before. I've been doing a lot of that. I've been watching a lot of movies. I wanted to point out, I also watched The Pale Blue Eye the other day.
Yes.
And I know you saw it, and I think you are going to talk about it, so I'll keep it brief. I liked it.
Dude, me and Mike are going to do that one. Yeah, I saw it in the movie theater. I'm really excited about presenting that to everybody. Hopefully you guys have all had a chance to see it, because now I think it's on Netflix.
It is. That's how I saw it.
Yeah.
And definitely worth a watch. It's not, it's not perfect, but it's atmospheric. It's well made, and the kid playing Poe is incredible.
I just watched this thing on the GQ YouTube channel with Christian Bale, where he breaks down a lot of his iconic roles, and he talks about that film as well as all of his other roles, and how.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and how I forgot the actor's name, but the guy who plays Poe, about how awesome he was to work with.
I can see that, yeah. He's another British Harry Potter actor. I guess he was in the Harry Potter movies. Because I'd never seen him before. Or, no, that's not true. I saw him in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and that was the only thing I saw him in. So I looked it up, and I was like, oh, he's in those Harry Potter movies that I think I've seen a couple of them. But some of those actors have really gone on to try to shed that image of, like, the kid actor or the someone who's in a popular, film series. And now he's playing Edgar Allan Poe, much like, Robert Pattinson. He was in one of those movies, but, of course, he's very well known for the Twilight movies. And then he goes off to do films with David Cronenberg and, play Batman and work with the Safdie brothers.
I was just going to bring up Robert Pattinson, because on that same GQ YouTube series, he was on there as well, talking about his iconic roles. And I did not know that he was British.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't. I don't. What the fuck do I know?
I didn't know Christian Bale was British when I saw American Psycho, and then I saw an interview with him. And I was like, "Fuck, that guy's British! Wow."
I guess technically he's Welsh, so.
Yeah. Okay. So it's even kind of a wilder accent.
Yeah.
But Christian Bale is such an intense dude. I've seen that GQ or some of that GQ interview, because I don't remember him talking about The Pale Blue Eye. But I remember just like watching him just talk about his roles, thinking like, this guy's really intense.
Dude, there was that, I forgot what film it was. Maybe it was American Psycho, where he was getting threatened by people, and his manager was like, "You've been getting these threats. People have been following you on your walks that you take every day, and someone noticed that you walk down this alleyway, and they're gonna follow you down this alleyway and like fuck you up. So you better not. You better take a different route." And Christian Bale is like. He's like, "Oh, of course I didn't do anything differently. I'm like, bring it on. Come and find me." It's like,
yeah, maybe he thinks he really is Batman or something.
I bet he's like similar to Tom Hardy. I bet he's a guy who could probably fucking handle himself. You know what I mean? He just seems like the guy who probably boxes or does something like that, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, he gained like an obscene amount of weight after The Machinist to play Batman, so he clearly knows how to take care of himself physically.
Yeah, but there's a big difference between being muscular and knowing how to fight people. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah, exactly. I'm neither, so I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I also watched a movie called The Menu. It was high up on a lot of lists. I saw not just horror fans, just it's regular end of the year list. So kind of got on my radar. I was like, I got to see this, man. And I got to say, have you heard of this movie?
Yeah, I think we all discussed this on the text thread over the last week or so. Yeah, I now that we've been talking about it and some other people whose opinions I pay attention to, I think I might check it out.
Oh, so maybe I'll save my thoughts on it. Maybe we'll do an episode.
Yeah, I think so.
But I saw it, and all I can say is, I have some thoughts. I also, non-horror, watched the Fabelmans, the new Spielberg movie.
Yeah,
and
did you like it?
I did. It's Steven Spielberg. You got to watch what Steven Spielberg makes. You just do. If you're a fan of movies, it's Steven fucking Spielberg. And very good movie. And I also watched the movie we're about to discuss because that was something I really, really wanted to see. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. What about you, Mike? You all caught up? You seen everything you want to see?
Well, I'm getting there. There was definitely a lot of stuff that we missed last year, and I just wanted to bring up that on the Everything Went Black Patreon. This Christopher contacted me, and he said, "What are your thoughts on You Won't Be Alone?" And I'm like, you know something? I haven't seen it yet, so I watched that movie last night. And yeah, and I know that I think we talked about it too a little bit. So that's something I just saw like 10 hours ago, maybe.
Oh yeah, I was gonna watch it last night, but something, of course, went wrong. Everything's going wrong in my house. I had some internet trouble, so I couldn't rent it. So I'm gonna correct that tonight and watch that. I read something about it that really made me want to see it. It said, imagine if Terrence Malick directed a horror movie. And I thought, well, I'm in. You mentioned two of my favorite things, Terrence Malick and horror movies.
I could see that, yeah. It's definitely within the realm of folk horror. And there's, after watching it, I'm going to have to do some research on this. You know what I mean? There's a lot of kind of folk mythology that's part of the story. And I want to make sure that, especially if we're going to talk about it, that I have some kind of background in the particulars of the folklore that's shown in the film.
That's your whole thing, man.
That's not my whole thing. I just enjoy that kind of stuff,
I know.
I saw Ghostwatch, the UK, that aired in the 90s. It was like a presented as like a real news program about some supernatural paranormal goings on out in a council estate, and fucking awesome. Yeah, really, really cool.
Yeah, I think there's a documentary on Shudder about found footage movies, and I think that's the first time I heard of that.
Yeah, it's Shudder. I think it was on Shudder for a while, but I bought the Blu-ray, and I think it's
Mm.
a Region A disc.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so I have that. Watched that a few days ago, and there's a ton of extras on there that I have to get through. But yeah, it was pretty killer in my opinion.
So do you have a region-free Blu-ray player, or did you hack your Blu-ray player?
No, I have an all region player.
Oh, okay. Because back in when I don't have a DVD player anymore. I use my PlayStation. I found cheat codes online to hack your machine,
Yeah,
and no longer works. So, but I've been wanting to get a region-free player because a lot of stuff that comes out in overseas doesn't make it over here, or it's not quite the same over here. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I mean, the technology, that type of technology is so cheap these days because hardly anyone, buys that kind of stuff anymore. Everything's streaming, you know.
That's true, but at the same time, I found like I went to Waterloo Records the other day here in Austin. Great record store. If you're traveling through, you really need to stop in there. But they also have a really good movie section. And I noticed the price of Blu-rays are still kind of high, or higher than I remember.
Really?
So, yeah, well,
Interesting.
I think because so few people buy it, it's like a niche thing, you know.
Oh,
Like
yeah, I can see
there's
that. Yeah.
they have a box set for The Wicker Man, my favorite film of all time, for $100. I'm of course going to buy it, but part of me is like $100. Come on, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, stuff like that, like deluxe, like box set type things. You're $70 to $100. That.
Yeah,
I could see that.
it's worth it. It's my favorite movie. It's great packaging. It has every version of the movie you can think of, a documentary, um, and it's the greatest horror movie ever made. So worth it. Worth $100.
Yeah. I saw Lux Eterna. I love Gaspar Noé. That
Oh,
yeah,
where did you see that?
it's on Shutter.
It is?
Yep, certainly is.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think I had brain damage today. I don't know what's
it's
I don't remember anything.
it's got
Um,
Beatrice Dahl and Charlotte Gainsbourg in it. Two of my favorites.
right.
And the guy who gets jerked off in the beginning of Love, the American, he
Yeah.
he's he's also playing an American in this film. So
He's not an American though.
he's not. I thought yes, he is.
Is he?
The actor? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, because I know I saw him in Devs when I was back a few months ago when I was watching that show, and I was like, it's driving me nuts. Where do I know that guy from? And
He's
he's
the
the
guy who
same
got jerked
actor.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, he shows it all in that movie. It's cool he can still get work after that. A lot of places would probably look frown upon that role, but good for him.
Yeah, but it's in Europe. It's different. You know what I mean?
It is. It
And
is.
he's
Yeah.
primarily in European films, I think.
Right. Yeah. I haven't read much about that movie. Did you liked it?
Did I like Lux Eterna?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I did. Oh, the guy's name is Carl Glussman, and he, of course, born in New York City.
Oh, okay. So, all right, I was
So
wrong.
he looks like like a early 2000s dude you'd see like hanging out living in Williamsburg or like hanging out in Avenue A, like in that area. You know what I mean? Like
Gotcha.
by Brownies,
Oh, yeah.
like that kind of thing. You know?
Yeah. I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah,
Barney's was a great venue too.
it
Side
was
note.
that Avenue A in the late '90s and early 2000s. That whole area was really cool to hang out in. Sidewalk cafe, like all that kind of stuff. It's all gone now.
Yeah, I think a lot of what's cool about, at least what I thought was cool about New York, it isn't there anymore.
Yeah. One other thing, I've been on this big Clint Eastwood kick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I watched Play Misty for Me on Netflix.
Oh, you went way back.
Yeah, that's an oldie but goodie. Very, very good movie. Clint playing a little bit of a different role than you're used to seeing him, but still a really good film.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
did he also direct that one or just act?
And we directed that too.
He directed it. Okay, yeah.
And
You know, Clint Eastwood was on a roll as the director for a while. He kind of lost the thread lately.
yeah, well, I mean, you can only stay relevant for so long, you know.
Yeah, he's 90 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
like I don't think anyone would be like, oh, you know, why did he retire?
For anyone who likes reading out there, there's a new Adam Neville short story that was released called Rise Up Together, and it's in a short story collection called Close to Midnight, which also features a short story by Brian Keene, which is that's Scandato's guy. Brian Keene's excellent, but Scandato introduced me to Brian Keene, and also Ramsey Campbell for you.
The great Ramsey Campbell.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, he's got a story in there too, so that's something to check out.
He's a staple in those horror collections. Back in my touring days, I would always bring along a volume of the best new horror. They had one every year. Did you ever get one of those?
Yeah, those are killer, man, for sure.
Yeah, they're not around anymore.
No,
like you gotta pay a little extra money on Amazon for those. But yeah, like Brian Keene, he was kind of a regular in those, along with Ramsey Campbell, and Ligotti would pop up every now and again. Ed Klein, people like that. Those are always a good companion. You've got 15, 20 minutes to kill, just read a quick story. I love those horror anthologies, and they used to be everywhere, and now not so much.
I just showed up in mail the Ted Klein's novel Ceremonies, which is on deck right now. I'm wrapping up a couple other books, but that's going to be the next book I think I start reading.
Nice. I am going to read more in 2023. 2003, as I like to call it. Yeah. My friend wrote a book last year, and I still haven't read it, and I feel like an asshole, so I really got to get on that.
Are you talking about Pete?
Yes. Yeah. The Devil Himself by Peter Ferris. Great writer, and I really owe it to him to read his book.
I read that book in one evening, actually.
Did you? I did that with his last book, the Last Call for the Living, which I blew right through it. I was blown away. I was like, Jesus Christ, I can't. You're a good writer.
No, Pete's great. And anyone out there, this Pete doesn't necessarily write horror, but it's crime fiction, but very dark crime fiction. So if for you fans of maybe True Detective or something like that, definitely check out Pete Ferris's work. It's really, really excellent, by the way.
Yeah, very good. And I read a couple of short stories before that. He's a fantastic writer. I am going to read The Devil Himself this month, hopefully.
And just looking ahead, today's Friday as we record this, I'm going to see Skinamarink, however the hell you pronounce it.
No, I don't even know how terrible. I can't pronounce the director's name of the movie we're about to talk about. So
in the theaters tonight. It's
you mentioned that. Yeah.
I guess it opens today, and it's an AMC nearby here in Edison, and at the Menlo Park. If anyone wants to try to challenge me, I'll be there. I'll be there tonight at 10:00 at Menlo Park AMC. So you get to pick your seat, right? So as of right now, I'm the only person in the theater.
No, that is the best, man. I miss those days. The whole entire time I lived in LA, I think that happened maybe once.
I mean, I would, out here in the suburbs, a movie like that probably isn't on too many people's radar, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm surprised it's playing out there.
Yeah, it's playing in all the AMCs. It's playing, you go on there. I have the app, and there's an AMC right, really close. So I go there all the time to see movies, and they get pretty much all the cool, sort of off-center stuff, as well as the big, Hollywood studio films.
Now, do you ever get? Here's what I think is going to happen. You'll be the only one, and then halfway through the previews, a couple people will filter in, and then 20 minutes into the movie, they'll all be gone.
If someone is not in the know about this movie and they just wander in, or they bought it just to go out and check it out, I definitely anticipate a high walkout quotient.
I remember going to see the Brothers Grimm, the Terry Gilliam movie, when I lived in Queens, and this guy sat in front of me with his girlfriend with popcorn, soda, candy, and 20 minutes in, he's like, "Ooh, what the fuck is this movie?" Like, he just was really upset and stormed out. And I thought, man, this guy just paid like $90 to sit through 20 minutes of a movie.
I considered
But
asking a lady to join me tonight, but this would be a weird one for a first date, I think.
well, So like, he just put it up there on, one of those dating apps. Going to the movies tonight. Who wants to come?
Bro, I'm done. I had my fill of dating apps. I did it for like a month, and it really did not pan out too well for me, man.
I guess it panned out well for me. I went on one date, and we were 5 years later. We're living together in Texas, so I think it worked out okay for me. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it
kind
was
of dark.
a fucking nightmare, man. Honestly,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll just leave it at that.
Well, I know that movie's going to be on Shudder relatively soon. So I'll probably be watching it on Shudder because apparently I'm a shut-in. I don't go out and do anything anymore.
Well, let's get into it then, man.
All right, man, let's do it.
So we're today's episode is Bones and All, directed by Luca Guadagnino, and you might recognize that name from the Suspiria remake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Screenplay was by David Kajanic.
Sure.
Yeah. Blood Creek and the excellent TV series The Terror, first season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Have you seen that? The Terror?
I didn't, but I remember someone on one of the jobs I had in California. My boss actually was talking my ear up about how great the first season was of that. It's on a ship or something.
Yeah, two things about that actually, real quick, is the series is great, and it's based on a book. It's like one of these like I don't know, like maybe 500 or 600 pages long, and it's the book is incredible. It's like stranded at sea, trapped in the ice, like weird fiction story. It's fucking great book, and the series was awesome. The first season I didn't see. There's a second season that goes in a totally different direction, but I haven't seen the second season.
That was kind of becoming a trend, like every show was like an anthology for a while, it seemed like.
I'm not against that idea. I think that's a cool
Me
idea.
neither.
It just no one's really pulled it off well.
I had to think about that, but you're probably right.
I mean, I know True Detective tried to do that to debatable results.
Yes, very, very hotly contested. Is there a good season after season one? Which I think they all have their pros and cons.
I agree with that. Yeah. So this Bones and All was released September 2nd, 2022 in Venice, and then November 18th, 2022 in the U.S. So this is last year's film. We did not get around to this movie. Shame on us. But we're talking about it now in 2023. So what do you want?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 130 minutes. Kind of long, and I guess we'll talk about that too.
Sure.
Yeah. And oh man, I failed to write this down, but I think it's based on like a young adult novel. Am I correct about that?
It is based on a book. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a YA novel, although I certainly see elements of that in this movie, although like this is the correct way to do that. This definitely doesn't pander to that audience at all.
Yeah, it's pretty pretty high profile cast in this film. A lot of there's like some very surprising cameo appearances by well-known actors in this movie.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of those, hey, I recognize that guy.
Yeah. But the main stars are Taylor Russell as Marin and Timothy Chalamet.
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 Something
Timothy
like that.
Chalamet as Lee. And you'll recognize him as the Muad'Dib from Dune, the Dune film.
Yeah, he's sort of the hot young actor of the moment, or the maybe that's not the correct, but the interesting young actor.
I think he's great. I really enjoy his work so far. I've only seen him in these two things, you know.
Yeah, I've seen him. He popped up in I think a Wes Anderson movie. I've seen him. I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. He definitely picks interesting roles and seems to be maybe more director oriented.
Yeah.
Which is good, for someone so young. This guy's probably like what, 24, 25 the most.
Yeah, the dude should probably eat a steak or something like that, though. He's like, the kid, he looks like a skeleton, this guy. You know what I mean?
He does.
Mark Rylance as Sully.
The great Mark Rylance.
Yep.
Yeah.
We got some appearances of Chloe Sevigny as Janelle.
Mm-hmm.
David Gordon Green as Brad.
Yeah.
You catch him in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did. Well, it was driving me nuts. I'm like, who is that? And I looked it up. I was like, oh, fuck. Of course, it's David Gordon Green.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really well done, I thought, this film.
Yeah. The first thing I wanted to talk about with you about this movie is this a horror movie? I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, okay. I considered that. I'm going to say yes, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are definitely some fanciful elements to this, And if Silence of the Lambs can be considered a horror movie, and I know that was under hot debate in the 90s. If you consider that a horror film, which I think by now most people do, then you can consider Bones and All as a horror film.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I have a sort of a broader definition of horror than a lot of people. Now, I don't think the intention of the filmmaker was to make a horror movie. I also feel the same about his Suspiria remake. I think that scaring and shocking an audience is not really in the forefront of his mind when he made his last two movies. This is very much a road movie, but revolves around a subject that is kind of revolting and horrific. So in my mind, it definitely counts as a horror movie.
Yeah, and also, but there's if it was only about these two fine young cannibals out there eating people, then that you go further into the debate as to whether or not it's a horror film. But the fact that there's these other elements, these other people out there that have a similar quirk, that is not just some little kink they have or what they like to do. Like there's some condition that exists that's passed on, possibly through genetics, that lead people to this life. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and I should point out the word cannibal, at least I don't think, was ever mentioned once in this movie, was it?
No, but we're not talking about zombies versus ghouls versus walkers. Like they're clearly cannibals because they're eating human flesh. So yeah.
Right. I just thought it was an interesting choice that they never really meant. It's sort of like when you watch The Sopranos, they never say the mafia, they say this thing of ours,
Right.
It's sort of similar to in this movie where they're never like, hey, we're cannibals. They just say what we are, like our condition, our thing. They never call it by name, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah, definitely. But the thing is, though, you could easily substitute like some take on vampirism instead of the flesh eating. You know what I'm trying to say?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
There is that kind of outsider, borderline like romanticism angle that this movie plays on, which
sure,
there had been different iterations of vampire stories that play on those same notes. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But what's interesting about them is that they're very relatable, normal people with this quote unquote condition. Like they show them eating regular food, so they can live normal lives. It's some sort of compulsion that they can't. Don't really have any sort of control over.
But there is this uncanny way in which that they can identify themselves out in the wild. Like they can smell like another eater. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly, and that kind of brings an almost supernatural element to the movie. It's not in the forefront, but it's there, and it's not something they really can. They just sort of, you don't see Marin learning this. She just sort of develops it over time. It's just a part of what they are. I thought that was very, very cool.
And also I think I heard an interview. I'm not sure if it was with the director or someone else. I think it was. It might have been actually on Evolution of Horror, like that other podcast that I like. It's someone says that this isn't a horror movie, but I'm like it is, because you have these supernatural elements in it, and
Yeah.
there are definitely horror set pieces in this film too. It's actually pretty brutal at times.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. It almost sort of reminds you that you're watching a horror movie. You're watching a movie about people who eat people. Because it's like I said, it's not really the focus of the movie. There's these long stretches of these two people falling in love, and it's a road movie, so you see them meeting all these different quirky people, and then it's sort of punctuated by brutal, swift, horrific violence.
Yeah, I
I
know,
mean,
and in some ways it's kind of a cop out, I think, when people in 2023 or 2022, whenever, if you want to say at the time this film was made, it's a cop out in this modern day environment to say that a horror film is not a horror film. I mean, because even though I think you mentioned that the intention of this movie wasn't necessarily to horrify, but to tell this story, but there are very horrific elements in this story, and there's supernatural elements. So to me, that defines it as a horror film.
sure. And like I said, I have a much broader, like to me, David Lynch probably doesn't consider himself a horror filmmaker, but I would very much put Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive into the horror category. They are nightmares, and therefore nightmares are horrific. Therefore, they're horror movies.
Yeah, Eraserhead, I put that in there too.
Eraserhead,
And there's
Enemy.
yeah, yep,
No,
Enemy.
yeah,
Yep.
I mean that to me, like some people say that's a stretch to call it a horror movie, but not to me. It's not.
Yeah, so this is a horror movie, but it's like you're saying, it's a road movie. Marin is living with her single father, and we learn that she has a mother out there. The kind of motivation of this movie is Marin wants to connect with her mother after her dad pretty much abandons her. The opening scene is Marin is at this sleepover with these other young ladies, and it looks like there might be some romantic activity between her and another young lady, but instead, she fucking bites her finger basically off.
Yeah, it is a very horrific scene. I guess in some way I knew the plot of the movie, so I was expecting something to happen, but it was truly shocking just how graphic and disturbing it was.
I
And
guess, yeah, and that's the whole thing about this. Oh, it's not a horror film. I mean, then you could say that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not a horror film either, then, because there's, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a bunch of violent rednecks. So this is like,
yeah,
I don't know. That stuff bothers me in this day and age where it's like, oh, it's not a horror movie, but it is.
yeah.
The first scene.
Oh, absolutely. And the scene is shocking and horrific. And I definitely, and my girlfriend who I watched this with definitely recoiled watching it. Like, wow, it went further than I was expecting. It was pretty graphic. But that's sort of what kicks off the whole movie. You see that her father has really been protecting her from herself her whole life. Like he locks her in at night. They seem to be living this sort of vagabond life. They're living in like this and it's sort of the theme in the movie, if you notice. Like every place they go to is very dumpy and trashy.
Temporary. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're living this sort of temporary existence, and I didn't quite catch why the father left. He's just not that he's had enough, but he couldn't help her anymore, I guess is what I gathered.
I got that feeling that it was, yeah, that there's not much more I can do for you. You know, he's figuring that she's, 18 years old, and now it's
Yeah.
time for her to go out on her own and figure it out. And then what he does, though, is he leaves her a series of cassette tapes, which kind of give us as well as her background, which I thought was a really
Yeah,
interesting way to do that.
yeah, no, I thought the exact same thing. This movie needs some exposition here and there. This was a clever way to get that across, and very, very natural. It didn't bother me at all. One thing that bugged me about a different movie, you guys are going to Pale Blue Eyes. The opening was like exposition being read from one character to another, and I thought, well, this would never happen. You don't read someone's credentials to themselves. Like it rang very false to me in a movie that I otherwise really enjoyed. But here, very, very natural. Like, oh, he's got to take this. He becomes the de facto narrator of the movie.
And this film takes place in the 80s too, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, I don't think it ever mentioned when it takes place, but from the way they were dressed, she's wearing a Walkman with the cassettes that her father left her with those foamy earphones,
Yeah.
earphones from the 80s. So yeah, and judging from the music they were listening to, which is not a huge part of the movie, but certainly adds to the atmosphere of the movie. I would guess it was the 80s for sure.
Yeah, it's like a period piece for the similar to other.
Yeah, and I was trying to think, is there a reason to set it in the 80s other than it looks cool?
Well, I think maybe to give it that sense of isolation too, because like nowadays with like mobile technology, like now if you remember, even throughout the 90s, like when you're traveling, like before mobile phones, you really do detach from any kind of reality and you create your own reality, like back in those days. Like back before there were mobile phones, you can fucking lose yourself. You can get lost and not have anyone know where you are or get in touch with you and disconnect from everything. And that's why I think that was possibly part of the decision making to put it back in the 80s before mobile technology.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. It was easier to sort of do what they're doing back then. Whereas if you set it now, everyone's got cell phones. Someone goes missing. It's a lot easier to find out, trace them, things like that. So, yeah, and they're sort of living this, drifter existence. And yeah, like you said, in a time when that was much more possible, you could be under there. You could kill someone and take their car and drive it across the country.
Yeah, exactly. Because now, back nowadays, like with GPS and you could never really get away with that kind of stuff. People would find you out pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I was thinking the same thing. But it's not some sort of comment on the 80s or anything like that. Like American Psycho is very much comment on the Reagan era, capitalism, all that stuff. But this is just, yeah, exactly. A little bit of atmosphere, I thought, and it worked really well.
Well, the one thing that this movie is kind of a commentary on is, the outsider standpoint in society. Because there's some like sexually fluid aspects to this film.
Certainly, yeah.
Marin, is going to make out with another young lady, and even Lee, though he and Marin fall in love, is kind of a hustler too, like other men.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No. Finish your thought.
And even his appearance, he has like this kind of, the colored hair and, he's clearly putting himself on the outside of normal society. You know what I mean? Which is like, that's a big topic these days. People empowering themselves and all that. And in the 80s, that was like really a statement, like a very big departure. It was way harder to live in that atmosphere than it is now,
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I mean, being different back then was a bit of a scarlet letter, whereas now it's just sort of the norm. Not to mean it's completely accepted, but it's a lot more widespread than it was back then, for sure. If you were, into like any sort of counterculture, if you were gay, it wasn't. I don't think it was a time where you could wear it on your sleeve as much. At least that's my recollection of it. I could be wrong.
Yeah, definitely. That was for sure the truth about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and there's a scene in this movie between Marin and Lee in the truck, and when she realizes that he is like her and that she's not alone, and because she said, "Oh, I thought I was the only one," and I think it's a big metaphor for just exactly what we're talking about when you meet someone and you realize you're not alone.
Well, she'd met Sully, who was like another shade of what they are, but like way sketchier and darker. You know what I mean? Like he's like
exactly like
predatory,
Sully,
like older man.
Sully is like them, but he also is not like them. He is a predator and creepy, and man, what a great performance by Mark Rylance. He fucking sells this role perfectly. I mean, you get one look at this fucking guy, and like he's dressed like he's sort of like a cross between like a homeless guy and a fisherman.
Yeah, yeah, totally, man.
The little like toothpick case was a really nice touch, I thought.
The hair rope.
Yeah. Yeah, the hair rope, just the braided hair, and I wasn't quite sure where this movie was going. You think, oh, she met this weird guy, and there's that, but Sully becomes a presence sort of throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, and apparently, Rylance stayed in character during the entire filming of this production.
Of course he did. So everyone, yeah. Oh man, can you imagine going to craft service and that guy sitting next to you?
There's that one line where he's like, "It's never dully with Sully."
Yeah, and he refers to himself in the third person.
That's always a good touch, man, to refer to yourself in the third person all the time. That's
yeah, exactly. Like just real like little things he does really like just sells his character and tells you everything want to know about this guy before he even opens his mouth. Like it's an incredible performance. I hope like maybe it'll get some recognition, some award recognition. I doubt it, but it should.
Now let me ask you a question. Was your impression that most of these eaters were like him or like Marin and Lee?
Well, okay. That's an interesting thing you bring up because you do meet a few more readers. At one point, they're at a swimming hole, Marin and Lee, and they get confronted by a pair of eaters you think at first. But then you realize just one is a true eater and one is sort of an interloper, a group eater of sorts.
Yeah.
And
that's
I got the impression they were not good people.
No, hell no, because they fucking bailed. Like there was this whole nighttime thing where they rolled out. They were just like, fuck these guys, and they pieced out. Yeah.
But, yeah, I wanted to mention that scene because like they don't threaten them in any way. They just give off this vibe that the lead characters pick up on.
And once again, here's like the similarity to like the vampire, folklore, because you got the true vampire, then you'll have like some, like a Renfield or something like that. You know what I mean? and that's kind of what
Yeah.
the guy's sidekick wasn't truly an eater. He was just, like you said, a groupie for these guys, but he'd actually partaken of human flesh as well.
Yes, and he tells the story. Well, not David Gordon Green's character, Michael Schoenberg's character, who has appeared in every movie you've seen in the last 5 years. He's a great actor.
Yeah,
Um, he gives us the title. He's talking about feeding, and have you ever eaten anyone, bones and all? And yeah, nice touch there. Yeah, there's something very sinister about this character without ever saying anything threatening to them. He's very like inviting, offers them to drink beer, wants to hang out. But Marin seems to catch it right away that something's very off about these two.
yeah. So
And
so there's no real code among the eaters. I mean, I think Sully says something about we don't eat each other, but that might be just his fucking take on it. You know what I mean?
that's what I thought. I think he says I don't anyway.
Yeah.
Like it also implying that maybe others do. They don't seem to band together. They're all sort of loners and sort of think they're the only ones. Like like this guy probably took David Gordon Green on just because he was lonely and thought I'm the only one like this, so I'm going to turn this guy to something like me. And you can see his loneliness because when they bail, he kind of runs after him.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. And
which
oh, well, sorry, what was the question?
I was going to say, we're talking about all these eaters. What did you think about the character of Lee? Now, we're clearly supposed to like Lee. He's the male lead, but Lee is a murderer.
Well, you probably know guys like Lee. You know what I mean?
Murderers?
Well, no. If you take the murderer aspect out of it, I mean, you probably had a similar lifestyle as me when I was younger, or we were both younger, or when I was younger, or whatever. He reminds me of these dudes that I met a bunch of people out west when I was like in my early 20s that were they rode trains, and one guy had a hat, and they slept in a like a storage unit, and they were kind of on the periphery. They were living this kind of Jack Kerouac, like lifestyle. You know what I mean? They're the travel.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I don't even think this is a thing these days, but there was like maybe in the 90s there was like these punks who were travelers. You'd see them like they'd hop trains and they'd busk,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
hustle, change, things like that.
Yeah, there was that zine in the 90s, early 90s, Comic Bus.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and that guy was basically living that sort of lifestyle, and a lot of punk kids sort of romanticized it. And they were all rich kids, so they always knew they could go back and live at their parents' house after they pretended to be homeless for like 6 months.
Well, I'm thinking specifically of this group of people that I met. There's these kids from Utah, and this is when I was living in Bellingham, Washington. I lived there for like a year, and this is like before I met you guys, like a couple of years before that, and they lived in a storage unit. There was always the one guy out of all the rich kids where it was real for him, like he had like a broken home or something, and he was running away from something. He didn't have that safety net like the other people did. And that's
Right.
that's the character. That's immediately what I picked up on Lee. Lee was like the one guy out of the group of those like, train hopping Kerouac style punks and he wasn't a bad guy, but there was just something not trustworthy about him. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And well, right away we're introduced to Lee. I think Lee thinks of himself. I think that as maybe a little self-righteous. Like he chooses the first person you see him eat. Well, you see that guy being a fucking redneck asshole to a lady in the grocery store. So Lee decides to eat him. But also, Lee's the same kind of guy who seems like he would eat that lady in the grocery store.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah.
because we see another victim, like he sort of hustles this guy
Yeah.
into tricking, like him and this guy are going to hook up, and they do, and then Lee kills him,
And
and it's
yeah, it turns
it's
out that he
brutal.
has a family, and he was,
Yeah,
it wasn't like this inconsequential murder. It was like this guy. Not only did you kill him, but you fucked up the rest of his family and his kids and everything. And that kind of gives like a dose of reality to the fantasy world that Lee might be living in.
yeah, exactly. I think Lee wants to be comfortable with what he is, but I don't think he's certainly more in his skin than Marin is. Like, I really think this movie is clearly Marin's journey into um, going through this, because you see her how uncomfortable all of this stuff makes her. She's clearly more upset about him having a family, this guy having a family, than Lee is. Lee is sort of like, oh, we didn't know. It probably bothers him, but it doesn't bother him that much. But it really bothers Marin. Marin is fighting the inevitable. You know what she's going to become. You know that she's going to be, a person who eats other living people. But she's not quite comfortable with it yet at this point in the movie.
One other thing I wanted to bring up about eating people, and whether or not there's some other kind of supernatural like element to this thing. Now, over the years, I guess like the zombie craze has kind of come and gone, ran its course maybe, but there was a period of time where everyone was like really into zombies, and myself included, and that was like one of my favorite subgenres. So
Sure.
the concept of the human teeth being completely inadequate for eating human flesh came up raw. Like,
Hmm.
so in order for these eaters to be able to tear into raw human flesh, they would actually have to have some pretty, jacked up teeth and jaws.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It never shows them transform or anything like that. Like they're not they or focus on their teeth at all.
No, and
So yeah,
yeah. So there's like, but also it's like maybe once again this is like some kind of condition that they have. So maybe this is like another step in like some offshoot of human evolution or whatever that is allowing these people to eat raw human flesh.
right. Yeah, exactly. And I think we learn later in the movie that this is something that seems to be passed down.
Right.
Because like I said, this is really a road trip movie. They go through several different states to get to was it Minnesota to see Marin's. They find Marin's grandmother, hoping to find out some answers about Marin's mother. And she's the grandmother doesn't want really anything to do with Marin, and that's obvious from the very first second. And they sort of hinted at they didn't approve of their mother, of Marin's mother marrying a black man.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yep.
Was maybe I was looking into that too much, but
No,
that's what
I
it
picked
seemed
up
like to
on
me.
that. That was
Okay.
definitely, once again, there's like some social like commentary going on here and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And they knew what Marin's mother was, and kind of not abandoned her, but like sort of let like the mother's in the hospital in a mental institution, and they seem perfectly content with her staying there. Like they want nothing to do with Marin's mom.
And this is when we see a shocking portrayal of her
Yeah,
mom by Chloe Sevigny.
yeah. Chloe Sevigny is a great actress and shows you can do so much with. Did she even say one word in her scene?
Yeah, that's a good question. I seem to remember there was some dialogue with her, but it
Yeah, I
might have
think.
been a voiceover or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. It was a voiceover. You're right. But it is very shocking, and you see that she's got no arms basically,
Yeah,
and
she's great in this role, definitely.
yeah. I want to point out the acting in this across the board is fantastic.
I have to agree. It's a, like I said, man, it's a fucking tight, very technically sound movie for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, most people get, a few moments in the movie. Like you have, a big actress like Chloe Sevigny, and she's in the movie for 5 minutes. And you get the guy playing Sully, and you think he's just going to be one and done, but he keeps popping up here and there throughout the movie.
Well, let's also talk about his hair rope that he has, which is fucking disgusting if you ask me, man.
Mm. And that's when you kind of get the vibe that like Sully is more than a feeder or an eater, whatever they're calling him. He's a serial killer.
Yeah.
This is part of his process that he has to do. He takes trophies, he takes pieces of their hair, which is, I mean, that's serial killer 101 as far as I know.
Yeah, totally. And it's, you see this rope of just, could you imagine what the thing smells like?
I was thinking that exact same thing. Like, yeah, when he shows up later in the movie and he's in a van, I thought, of course he's in a van. And you can almost imagine what that fucking van smells like. And
him
that's what I
too.
love that.
He looks
Yeah,
like
oh,
he
God,
smells
yeah.
too, man.
I like that every time you see him, he has 3 scenes in the movie, and every time you see him, he's dressed sort of differently. Uh, he's got a van with someone else's name, like, like Don's, like, fucking fixture removal. I don't know. Like, it's clearly not his van. And it's so creepy because at this point in the movie, you've kind of forgotten about Sully. You're like, oh, he's at the beginning of the movie, and you learn like he's just been following these 2 kids for weeks or months, actually. And that which also leads to your point about the supernatural element. That like, okay, most of these people can't smell them that far away, but this guy seems to have some sort of superhuman ability to sense all the people like him.
Well, yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, they talk about how they smelled each other, and and I can't smell people, unless
Yeah,
you know,
unless they stink.
unless they stink. I could probably smell
Yeah,
Sully if I saw him out on the street somewhere, though.
I have a feeling you could. um, there's one like weird moment. I don't even know like why I rewound it a few times. It seemed like the actor playing Sully forgot his line and he leans against the van and then finishes his line. I was like, I wonder if there's someone in the van like speeding his lines to him.
I mean, I didn't catch that, but it's pretty brilliant if that's actually what happened and they left it in because it just adds to the oddness of that character.
Yeah, because he goes, I like, and then he like leans his head on the van and comes back and goes, I like our talks together. It was like, wow, did he forget a line and they just left it in because it worked? Yeah, I don't know. I love little moments like that in movies that like those accidents that work so well. I don't know
Big
that's what it
question.
was, but
Big question is, why do you think he's obsessed with Marin? Is it sexual? Does he want to eat her? Like what is it? Why?
that is a really good question, and I couldn't get a read on that. I think Sully does have a code that he won't eat anyone like him, and I think he meets Marin, and that sort of uh, fractures his mind in a way. Like he doesn't really know what to do about this. Um, Maybe he's lying about not eating. Maybe this is all part of his process. I honestly, at the end of the movie, I don't know if he wanted to kill her or capture her and maybe brainwash her, make her more like him. I don't know what his intentions were. It's an interesting question. What
Yeah.
do you think?
Well, I kind of go back and forth on it too, and the way he's even introduced in the film is like super creepy.
Yeah.
She's in the beginning, she's on her own. She's at a bus station. She's like, bunking on a bench outside the bus station, I guess, where she's reading like Lord of the Rings or something, a Tolkien novel. and this guy just fucking rolls up, and he's like, "I smelled you from across," you know. And I was like,
He's got that whistle in his like
he's
voice.
like,
I
"I
smell you.
smelled you from blocks away," and I was like, "Oh my!" I'd
Yeah.
fucking run, man. As soon as I saw that guy, I'd get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, he is instantly so off-putting.
But
Like,
you know what, man? It's like you've been into all these fucking towns that these people are in. You've been through those towns before. You know what I mean?
yeah, I traveled by Greyhound bus from
Yeah,
Boston to the South, and yeah, you meet people like that,
you
of course.
you do. And it's like that's what I really enjoyed about this movie is just the weirdness of the shit that's out there in the world that's not even supernatural.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love these kind of movies where people are sort of, drifting around and the strange people that they meet that like maybe they'll come back later, maybe they won't. Like I really thought them killing the carnival worker was going to come back, but it doesn't.
And that's some 1980s shit right there because like in this day and age, that would be all over like the internet. Like that would be like
Oh
whatever
yeah.
30-year-old gay man found eviscerated in the cornfield. It would be
Yeah, yeah.
everywhere. Then there'd be like some right wing conspiracy about it, and
Yeah.
Donald Trump would like put something on Truth Social about how Antifa killed this guy and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Made it look. Yeah, that's a good
The
point.
Biden administration was behind it somehow.
Yeah, yeah. I told you they're eating children, they're eating babies.
Yeah, it'd be a
beautiful babies.
QAnon
They're eating
conspiracy.
them. Yeah, some nonsense like that.
Right.
Yeah,
But back in the
absolutely.
80s, people would just fucking disappear, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And that enables our characters to sort of drift through these different places. They're taking wallets, they're taking IDs, they're taking people's monies and cars. Like, you wonder if any, like, by the time our two lovers decide to settle down in Michigan and try to live a normal life, are they living under assumed names, or like, what are they doing? And at one point, you see Marin going to the movies. She's still reading her books. Um, I thought at one point it looked like she was coming from school. Like, oh, she's attending school now. Uh, is she under someone? Did she kill someone and take their ID? You kind of wonder about these things watching this.
Yeah, and I back then it seems like you probably could just like have assume someone else's identity like a lot easier.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did want to talk about the ending a little, and if you thought it was some romantic, hopeful ending or dark. Um, what were your thoughts on the ending?
I thought it was kind of dark actually. I don't think things really ended up too well for Marin.
That's yes. I thought the same thing. I thought I think at that point she's made like the full transformation into uh what she is. She can't fight it anymore, and the future does not look bright for her. This uh drifter lifestyle, this thing that consumes her, it's going to be something that persists till she dies.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I found it to be a very downbeat, dour ending myself. And I like the little flashback that it ends on. I thought that was a nice touch. I think my only complaint about this movie would be it's paced wonderfully until we get to Michigan, until they decide to live normal lives. And then, like, boom, the movie's basically over 10 minutes later, maybe 15. Um, I thought the rest of the movie was paced perfectly. And then it's just sort of like, oh, that's it? It's over?
Yeah,
I found the ending a little abrupt.
I agree. And it would have been cool if they were able to like give you the sense that a lot of time had passed like while they were in Michigan.
Yeah, they mentioned it's been months, and you see differences in in Marin, like her hair is different. She looks more like a grown woman as opposed to a teenager. So I'm assuming it's been a while. I get the sense of a passage of time, but the movie's already 2.5 hours. What's an extra? I don't know, 10 minutes maybe. This director has a way about him. He made a movie called Call Me by Your Name that was even longer, and I swear I didn't want that movie to end. He just has this knack of like you just getting drawn into this environment he creates and these characters. And the same thing with this movie. When it ended, I thought, well, I could easily like go on for a 2.5 hour movie.
I could have dug that for sure. I think that would have been.
Yeah.
I could have went for a little bit longer on this one. Also, another thing, another subplot is like just addiction too, and I guess it goes hand in hand with like the outsider perspective. And we were talking about traveler punks and just that kind of rough and tumble world of like the comet bus experience,
Yeah.
And when I was watching them settled in Michigan, where they were living this, relatively normal life, of course, things inevitably go to shit.
Yeah.
Now, that is the story of an addict to some extent too. Where I mean,
Yeah.
you and I both know people who have had problems with drugs and alcohol, and I'm thinking of a specific person who's struggled with it their entire life, and they've had sometimes years of things going really well, and then it just gets fucked up, and they leave town abruptly or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Uh,
that felt, at least to me, that was like this kind of overarching, self-destructive, addictive kind of thing in the movie.
oh yeah, absolutely. I think you could take this as a metaphor for a lot of things. Some people, I looked a little bit like thought it was like you could look at it as a metaphor for coming out as gay or like we're talking about being regular society outsiders, punks and what have you, or like you just said, like addiction. Like there's a lot to think about. There's a lot going on in this movie that
Yeah.
just beyond the plot, and it just adds to overall what I thought was a pretty amazing movie.
And also speaking of what you just said, it doesn't beat you over the head with it either. Where it's like
No,
e-
no, yeah,
even if you have
absolutely.
like the coming out as being gay, um, both characters, Lee and Marin, have like they have like fluid sexuality in to some extent. More so I would say Lee, who we actually see, kind of doing.
Yeah,
But he's not like this flamboyantly gay character. You know, like it's not
no,
overdone or overbearing. Like he's like a guy who's just like, okay, whatever's clever.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, and yeah, I this is a smart movie too. Like it, yeah, like you said, nothing beats you over the head. You can sort of take these scenes and take them at face value, or you can think about it in a broader sense. It's not like the Candyman remake where like this bad, this good, this bad,
Yeah, yeah,
and it just
man.
it is without a subtle bone in its body. I can't stand that in any aspect. Or like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, there's not a subtle bone in that movie at all. It just beats you over the head with I don't even think the movie knows what it's trying to say. Like, are these woke kids annoying, or are they the hero, or is this redneck a piece of shit, or is he the hero? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the movie couldn't even understand its own what it was trying to say. Um, but that just shows the difference in a good filmmaker and a bad one.
Exactly.
And this director clearly has a great command of themes, of characters, of atmosphere. Like I said, I didn't want this movie to end. I wanted it to keep going. And at the end of the day, what would you give this? What are we talking here?
You know, I had a harder time than I thought I would with this. Because all right, now objectively, on a purely this on a purely objective sense, I'm going to give this a 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, if you take my personality out of it completely, because intellectually, I think it's a 4.5. Like it's an incredibly well acted movie. For 99% of it, I think it's like well written.
Mm-hmm.
Cool story. But I guess like I would be slightly below 4.5 on the other side of my personality if I put my personality into this thing, because like kind of like the S.E. Hinton YA aspect of it that I picked up on did not quite resonate with me. So, but nonetheless, that's just like a real picayune personal kind of flavor that I have for this thing.
Okay, so somewhere between a 4 and a 4.5 is basically what
But
you're saying.
I'm going to go on record and say 4.5 though.
Okay, I'm going to go 5.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I love this movie. A few nitpicks here and there, but your brain has a way of editing those things out when you think about something sometimes. And I love this movie. I was very surprised. I thought I'd like it, but I didn't know I'd like it as much as I did. This is one of the best movies of 2002.
2002, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the best movies of last year. Absolutely loved it. It's one I'm sure I'll go back to again. I hope it gets some awards love and more people find this movie. It's sort of an indie thing, maybe like you said, that has that sort of YA appeal to it. It's funny you said S.E. Hinton. I'm a little bit younger than you. I don't know if I grew up on those books, those S.E. Hinton books. Did you, or was that you? Were
I
kind of maybe a
never
little past
read
that?
it. All right. I didn't read any of that stuff when I was a kid. Like
Okay.
I think I went directly from reading the Hardy Boys right into like Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and J.R.R. Tolkien. I didn't read any YA novels, but and as far as like the films based on S.E. Hinton stuff, I liked Rumblefish. I thought was really cool.
Yeah, the Coppola movie, right?
Yeah, I mean it was
Oh,
so stylish, man. Black and white. You had the
yeah.
motorcycle boy. Mickey Rourke was in it. Matt Dillon.
Yeah.
Nicolas
No.
Cage is in that film. That movie I thought was great. I didn't really get into like the Outsiders or any of that kind of stuff.
Oh man, I love the movies. I love the books. See, I went from like Judy Blume to
Yeah,
like S.C. Hinton to like Stephen King. That was sort of my progression as a young man. So hey, maybe subconsciously I picked up on those YA elements too, and just really didn't make that connection until you mentioned it. But now that you say that, like I totally get that. I could see S.E. reading a version of this at like however old I was,
yeah.
30, 40, or like, 8, 9, however old I was when I read those books.
Yeah, and that's not really a diss. Like I'm not trying to like use
Sure,
that. It's just a different flavor than I'm into. You know what I mean? It's like I said, I didn't really
sure,
get into that stuff when I was a kid.
sure. I mean, you should be pointing out, though, this is definitely not Twilight or the Hunger Games or
No,
anything even remotely like that. Like, if this is a YA adaptation, this is leaps and bounds better than all the other ones.
yeah, it's a totally like adult take on it. Like it doesn't insult you if you're 16 years old and thinking that you need to have things wrapped up in like what they did with Twilight and stuff like that.
Yeah, it doesn't really over romanticize anything about it. It just treats everything as very matter of fact. Like this is who they are. This is where they go. You know what I mean? It like it doesn't ask you to judge the characters in one way or another, or sort of guide you of how you're supposed to feel about what they're doing. Like, there's nothing really romantic about what they're doing. It's ugly. It's grim. It's disturbing.
It's like I'm going to say this, if you can frame it up maybe this way, is like if you're like one of the cool kids when you're 15 or 16 years old that you like are dipping into the kind of adult stuff and you're like, that it's for you. as opposed to Twilight being for like the generic basic like people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, if you're like that cool like intellectual kid who's like edgy, you'll think this movie's like awesome. You know?
Yeah. Hey, which begs the question: is Twilight a horror movie?
I've never seen Twilight, so I mean it has vampires in it. So yeah.
I've seen one of them. I don't know which one, but it was. I gotta say, it was very entertaining because it was just so horrible. We were just laughing the entire time. We can save that for another day, though. All right,
folks. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week.
Take care, everyone. Or you can just take it in the podcast.
Yeah, who dis?
Who is?
It's a New York number, so I don't know who it is.
No,
It's probably a
it's
fucking
Bill
collector.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the